Hello, this is Alex from LearnBeachVolleyballFast.com. In this video I'm going to talk about a training aid that you can quite often in our gym find in the corner, forgotten and unused. It's called the Acuspike, and it's sort of a ball holder so that you can practice spiking technique without having a set. And there's quite a lot of controversy around this training aid. Some people say it's complete worthless, a big waste of money. Some people say it has helped them or their athletes that they're coaching or whatnot. So we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive and deeper look into that today. I think you will find this video interesting if you are either a coach or club director or someone that wonders if you should buy the Acuspike, or maybe a coach that wonders how you should use the Acuspike, or a player that has trouble changing your spiking technique, or fourth, maybe just someone that's curious about how our bodies learn new things. If you haven't seen the Acuspike, this is sort of what it looks like. It holds a ball somewhere, hopefully hittable, and you jump up, hit it off, and down comes a new ball. So it's very efficient, quick, easy. There are other solutions that does the same thing, basically takes away the unpredictability of a set. There's different balls with rubber bands, they hang in rubber bands and whatnot. And honestly, you can even, as a coach, if you're coaching your kids, you can take a box, set the box at the net, stand on the box and hold the ball in your hand, and it's sort of the same thing. Today we're going to learn that Acuspike is not a multi-tool, something that you can just give to anyone and they're gonna become master spikers. It's rather like a specialized, kind of specific niche tool that is very useful sometimes when you want to do very specific things, but when you're not doing those, it's not so good. Alright, we're about to get into the actual meat of this video, but before we do, there's two little quick things that I also want to say. Number one is that the Acuspike in itself, every time people use it for the first time, takes some getting used to. So I quite often see it has happened to myself and has happened to other people. Sometimes people try the Acuspike for just like 5 reps and they're like, this feels so weird because the ball is not moving. Normally the ball is coming at an arch at you and you have to time it. And hitting a stationary ball feels so weird for people that they only try a few reps and then they dismiss the whole idea and never use the Acuspike again and lose out on the value that you can actually get from the Acuspike. So anyone who's ever planning to practice with an Acuspike themselves or have their players practice with an Acuspike, let the player who's practicing have at least 5, 10, 15 minutes of only getting used to the machine at first. And after the player is used to the machine, then you can get into the actual teaching and using the machine for what it is. But there's like a break-in period for every person usually. Quite often people overestimate how high they can jump, so they actually put the ball at a higher position than what they can actually reach. It's some sort of bias in our head. I guess normally we're thinking that we're hitting it here, but it's actually on its way down, so we're actually hitting it a little bit lower or something like that. I'm not sure. Okay, second point is that what I'm going to teach today is controversial. It's based on science, partly, and it's based on motor learning, it's based on sports psychology, etc., etc., etc. And some people, some coaches especially, are quite interested in this. It's about specificity of learning and if this can translate to a real game situation, because the Acuspike is not a real game situation. In real game, the ball never stays stationary in the air. So I'm gonna make a little introduction of what I'm basing today's lesson on that I think coaches will find interesting. Coaches that are already interested in the subject. So, but I also know some people are not going to care about that. So if you're someone who doesn't need to listen to my ramblings of why what I'm teaching today might be true, then you can go to this time here and just skip that part. But if you're still watching me, that means that you're interested. So let's get started. Specificity of learning says that basically we are not learning. Skills don't really transfer from each other. Like if we're gonna learn to hit a volleyball, we need to practice hitting a volleyball and not kind of hitting a volleyball that's stationary in the air. There's a lot of research that back this up. And I'm not saying in any way that research is wrong, but I'm saying that the interpretation of that research might be sometimes wrong. I have yet to meet a volleyball coach that has taken the time to read this book that I believe is one of the most comprehensive books on motor learning so far, cover to cover, except myself. I haven't asked, to be fairly honest, I haven't asked every coach that I met if they have, but I think it's very rare that someone actually spent about a month of their life, is what it took me to read everything, to comprehend everything, to sit and think about everything in this book. A lot of people base probably their opinions on things they heard. There are a lot of high-level coaches in the world and in the States that are very, very, very ingrained on this specificity thing, and they basically dismiss everything like an Acuspike, etc. So before I read this book, I read quite a lot of sports psychology. So when I read this book, my brain went, sports psychology plus this equals solution here. Solutions that I don't think that the authors of this book have seen. Solutions that the way I teach volleyball is actually, I believe, sort of beyond where the science is today. Because anyone who knows sort of how science works, it's kind of, science is a search for truth, but always with an understanding that the truth is very complex. And scientific methods are like finding parts of the truth, but that doesn't mean that that's the end answer. Like there can be more nuanced truths under that. I hope that makes sense. An example, you see the table here. Someone could claim that this table is white, and you could probably set up some sort of scientific experiment and check, does this seem to be white? And yeah, some experiments will show that this is white. But then some guy will come and say, hey, that's not the whole truth, because there's some kind of black grayish dots here and other dots, so it's not fully white. Like, yeah, it's mostly white, but it's not really. And then you can set up more nuanced experiments, look in more detail, and realize that, yeah, it's mostly white, but not always. This is kind of a stupid example, but it's just kind of to explain the way science works. It's in a way a sort of a clunky way of understanding reality, because it takes a lot of time. And one thing I've learned as a coach is that, or as a person in general, is that life and the world is very, very, very complex. When we're dealing with how a person learns to spike, we're dealing with neurons in their brains, we're dealing with physics, we're dealing with what sort of instruction the coach gives to the player, we're dealing with their age, we're dealing with their motivation, we're dealing with the time frame. A lot of this research that says that transfer is very specific, skills is very specific, it's quite short term. What happens if we have a year? Sometimes the short term answer is better in the short term, but as we all know, sometimes you can be more productive in the long term if you actually have a long-term plan before you even start doing what you're doing. So there's a lot of nuances in this. And to technically understand how difficult it is, how much work it would be to research every single nuance of this whole thing, one can somewhat quickly. I'm not gonna spend the whole day explaining this, because this could be a 5-hour lecture or something probably. But you can quite quickly understand that if you want everything backed up by research, you would have to research with every single combination of these millions of things that you can combine, which might probably take thousands of years to conduct all of that research. Kind of a big claim, but I'll leave it there. I hope you understand what I mean. The world is infinitely complex, and which means that sometimes research you can use as a guideline, but not as absolute truth. And there are a lot of people live their lives by saying that if it's not backed up by research, I can't trust it. Well, one kind of hidden example for me is in the East, in Asia, people have been meditating for I don't know how many thousands of years. And in the West here, we've been like, yeah, it doesn't seem to make sense to just sit and do nothing. So we're not gonna meditate. Well, now in, who knows, year 2000 and around that time, we come up with research that actually explains that meditation is very useful. It's very good for our productivity, our happiness, focus, whatnot, sports psychology, etc. So now we start meditating. Well, what about these thousands of years that we were like, nah, research has not showed this yet, so we're not gonna do it. That's literally the result that can happen if you only rely on what's researched. But yeah, this is getting very philosophical. Let's not go down that path. At least I hope I maybe put some sort of thought into someone's mind. But yeah, we can discuss that later if someone wants. Cool, let's get into today's lesson. So, most of us have probably tried to multitask at one point in our lives. We are trying to talk to our girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, family member, and at the same time someone else calls, and then we are trying to communicate with both of them, and our brain sort of crashes. I think most people are familiar with that. So this is a ring that is representing our brain or our focus. So we are trying to talk with our friend, our family member, and then someone else also calls, and now we have too many tasks for our brain to be able to handle this. Give me a second, I'll get more colors. Okay, this should be easier to follow. So our focus is the brain is the black, and the tasks are red. So when we have too much to think about, at the same time our brain sort of crashes and we're not really getting anything done. So the Acuspike and learning how to spike in general. Spiking includes a lot of things. Spiking in a full game situation includes a lot of things to do. We have to time the ball, we have to use the right technique, we have to know our setter and how they like to set, and we need to know where we're hitting, and we need to have our game plan in our head. There's a lot of variables, a lot of things that we have to sort of hold in our mind at the same time. So what then happens if we have a technical biomechanical problem in our spiking? We're using an arm swing that is inefficient, that causes us shoulder pain, or doesn't get us the hitting results that we want, etc., etc., etc. Well, we can go and relearn the arm swing mechanics, exactly how we actually swing our arms. That's completely possible. But in a full situation, our brain might already be sort of maxed out to its maximum. So if now a coach comes and like, hey, you need to do your arm swing this way instead of that way, that might be a huge bubble over here that just has no space at all. Like, just the athlete is just not capable of taking that into their brain, which is a problem. And when this happens, all of this that's outside is just not happening. So a lot of people conclude, hey, it's impossible to change technique. It's very hard to change technique. It's the arm swing you learn as a kid is going to be the arm swing you have for the rest of your life, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff that actually people believe in, just because they don't realize this. Because, we're gonna see how this works. So to actually be able to change an arm swing, either you have to get really good at explaining the arm swing so that this bubble here is not as big and maybe fits in there. That might be possible. But another way to do it is to take away all the variables. Have the person standing on the floor and show them the arm swing. There's no timing involved, there's no game plan involved, there's no net involved, there's nothing involved. You just go through the arm swing, see how that works, feel how that feels in your body. Does that also hurt your shoulder? No, it doesn't. Okay, cool. Let's continue. The bubble was this size, which I tried to make it the same size as the whole brain. So it's actually a full capacity. Some people have trouble changing their arm swing even if they're standing on the ground, which means that it takes a lot of brain capacity to do that. But as long as it fits, we're fine. Because what happens in our brain is that we automate things. We automate movements. So something that at first takes a lot of capacity, over time takes less capacity. I'm sitting here right now, but if I would be standing up and walking around here, I wouldn't be thinking about my footsteps. My body has already automated the actual biomechanical skills of using my feet to walk. So I sort of just put an intention in my head, like, hey, I'm gonna go there, and my body just fixes that. However, when I was a kid and I was first learning to walk, doing these footsteps took up all of my capacity. But today it doesn't. So I can walk and talk about things, or I can walk and talk on a phone, or walk and play volleyball or whatever at the same time. And all of that fits in my brain. So what that means is that when we stand here for a while and do our arm swing, it's going to get more and more automated. So it's going to, over time, take a little bit less and less space in the brain, which is great, because then we are a little bit closer to being able to do it in other places. So let's say we now make it this small. We have some arm swing skills. Can we now just go and have a set, full-on game situation set, and go and hit the ball and expect that arm swing to happen? Answer is most probably no. And this is what the specificity in the motor learning talks about, because it doesn't just directly transfer. We actually have to consciously transfer a skill from one drill to another, which in itself, again, takes some focus. So let's go to the full-on game situation. Here is our brain. We need to think about the set location, we need to think about the timing, we need to think about the setter, we need to think about the game plan, etc., etc. And then we have to do this conscious work of taking what we learned in the standing arm swing drill to our arm swing here. But that job might be too big, which then creates a problem. It gets outside of the ring of what's possible. It doesn't transfer, and here's where the motor learning researchers say, hey, it doesn't transfer, it's worthless. The researchers are not saying it's worthless, but some people's interpretation are saying that everything we did so far is worthless. And then they dismiss the whole idea. And here is where the Acuspike spike comes in. because so far we have learned the arm swing, but we also need to learn to do arm swing plus jump. And we also need to learn the full game situation, which is arm swing plus jump plus chaos of the game. There's chaos in the game. With chaos, I mean there's a set that can be a good set, bad set, whatever. There's opponents, everything that you need to think about. So this ring here of transferring the skill from the arm, this drill into this drill, is a little bit too big. But if we now use the Acuspike, here is where the Acuspike becomes this very specific training tool that is very useful at times, but at most times it's worthless. And that's when you take it from the standing arm swing drill to using the Acuspike. Because the Acuspike, yes, you have to jump, yes, you have to transfer the arm swing, but you don't have to think about the timing and the setter and the game situation. That all end up being outside of the circle. So I think this makes sense. It's just a step-by-step method. You work with your brain, you work with your focus, how much things you can focus on at the same time. You take it step by step to that step, train it there, and then you go to the more difficult step and use it there. And some people are going to think that this sounds so obvious that it's crazy that anyone would argue this. And then there's a whole team of top-level coaches and researchers and whatnot that are just saying this is not true, because they are so ingrained on some of the research results that they got. Anyway, at this point we can skip these. We can get some repetitions here, which means that this arm plus jump becomes more and more automated. It becomes easier and easier and easier, which means that is going to be a smaller ring in this stage. I hope that makes sense. So then after all of that, then we can go to a full-on game situation, or let's say first just a in-spike situation with a set where we have a set, we have to time the ball, we have to jump, and we have to transfer the arm swing, but it's hopefully fitting in now. Just because we did this middle stage here with the Acuspike. But we might not be able to get to this point without the Acuspike. So the Acuspike is not worthless. It's very worthwhile at this specific middle point of learning a new spiking technique. Cool, so I hope that makes sense. I hope that someone got some sort of value out of this rambling here. Some people, some kids, for example, you just give them an Acuspike and they will learn something from it, and that will give them an awareness then in the full game situation that, oh, now I'm not doing what I did with the Acuspike, and then they fix it. So for some people, the Acuspike will just work, and with no instruction type of thing. And then some people are going to be more ingrained in their habits in how they do it in the full game situation. Maybe they have been using their same technique for years, and this whole process that I talked about is not as intuitive for them. For those people, they're going to need this more explained, and like how it actually make them see the step-by-step process before they even start the process. So yeah, I hope this video has led to some insights and some takeaways that you can use in your coaching or playing career. I have touched on a lot of controversial subjects in this video, and I have probably worded something in some way that someone is going to interpret in a different way than I'm intending it to be interpreted, which means that I'm foreseeing that some people are going to not agree with this video or have thoughts and ideas or arguments against me or whatnot and whatnot and whatnot. I'm a very curious person, and before I talked about how science it's very complicated, we don't really know, and there's always more to learn. So any comments, no matter if they're positive or negative, write them below. I'm very curious as a person. I always learn more from them. And yeah, I'm just simply trying to share ideas here that I don't see other people sharing. So I'm trying to to help us all get forward. But I know that we can build on top of this also. I also do think that I've touched on a lot of things today that you could go way deeper into all of them, and all of a sudden today's lesson would be sort of a university course or longer. So yes, there's a lot of details that I've left out of this video. There's a lot of more discussions to be had that I will have in the future, in future videos and courses that I will create. But for now, thanks for watching. Thanks for your time. Hope you got something out of it. If you enjoyed it, check out my project, see sort of more what I'm about. Check out my website. And yeah, hope I see you again. Have a good day.